As you look at the industry, and I think Panasonic has been affected by this more than any in the last decade or so, are you optimistic in terms of where it's going, or is it cause for concern?
Well, it's certainly a time of change, right? So that always leads to concern. You know, people are wondering, well, how does that look next? Personally, I think we're in an exciting time, right?
How so?
Because we're getting to a point where some of these technologies that you've talked about actually make it easier to create the kind of thing that we're doing. We already know that the incoming talent pool is smaller than it used to be. It's a given, right? So how do you adapt to that? And that's where technology is actually helping us make better content.
Because there's fewer people coming into the industry.
Yeah, exactly. So I need an assist. Okay, let's have the technology help you do that.
What is Panasonic Connect?
It's the North American version of Panasonic that sells to the AV market.
Now, would AV also be considered broadcast, or is that a different group?
That also is the same group, right? But the nice thing about it is we have quite a wide range of product. In fact, that's some of the things that we're actually showing here at this show.
What have you got that's new?
Well, we introduced both at the top end and the bottom end of our camera line. So at the top, there's U6100, which is a camera that's really designed for environments where there's a big LED wall behind the stage. So adapting to that LED lighting, all of those kinds of odd conditions, being able to handle moire and those kinds of things that come with shooting against an LED wall. And it is also a camera that's able to connect into a 2110 IP environment. At the other end of the scale, we've introducing a lot of things that are allowing easy accessibility into the product line. So we introduced the UE130, which is a new PTZ, 4K PTZ, and also a couple of 4K multi-purpose cameras, or some people call them box cameras, that can be tied into robotics or put into all of those odd kinds of positions that we need. And those are actually they run on the same control platform that the rest of our cameras do, so it's a nice entry into that. And for some people, that's an add-on to their system. For other people, this is the first camera they have. And so particularly if you combine it with the robotics and those kinds of things, it gives you a really powerful system at a really entry-level price.
One of the things that I've been reading about recently is how mobile phones have decimated portions of the camera industry. How do you differentiate your cameras to people buy Panasonic versus purchase an iPhone?
Most of what we're doing is actually for live environments. So you've got a lot of action going on. It's not like I can get up to really close with my camera and take the shot that I want. So I'm going to need lenses. I'm going to need some control. I'm going to ideally need that remotely so that I can put the camera where I need it to be but not have a person standing in the way. And of course, then there's a difference in imaging and those kinds of things. We could go into a deep dive on imagers. We won't do that. But that ability to really capture the image that you're looking for under normally suboptimal lighting conditions is where these other cameras really come into play.
I'm a podcaster. I'm not a broadcaster, at least not right now. But I'd like to be able to take advantage of some of the point-tilt zoom cameras that are out there. Can I get into a PTZ camera without spending $85 billion?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
How would I even get into that? What do I look at? What questions should I ask?
There's a couple of kinds of things. Certainly, you're looking at what is kind of the studio environment that you've got, right? And actually, in those kinds of things, as you know, as a podcaster, the first things are lighting and audio first, and then lighting, because those are really the environment that sets you up for success. Then it's the cameras that go in there. And most people actually, what we're seeing with some of the higher end studios, some of our customers actually have the professional studios that they're doing, and they have robotics in there.
Is there a difference between a robotic and a PTZ?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that?
So the robotics gives you more degrees of motion. And I can move up and down. I can move that camera a lot sideways. The PTZ can still track you. So PTZ is either the pan or the tilt, or I'm going to zoom in on you. But
as though it was on a tripod.
Yeah, exactly. But then you're still fixed in that one position, whereas in many of the higher end ones, they're wanting to have multiple kinds of angles, that ability to have more degrees of motion.
So I want to get a PTZ camera because robotics strike me as a bit more expensive.
They are, absolutely.
How do I decide which PTZ camera to get?
You're looking for a few things. One is certainly the type of output that you're going for. I mentioned, what's the environment you're in, because you're going to need a particular kind of lens depending on how far away that camera has to sit. And then there are things like frame rate and, do you need 4K or not? If you're going to do podcasting, probably not. So there's a number of other questions that you'd want to ask about the style of show that you're trying to produce, which then determine what camera is that you need to be in.
What trends are you seeing in the industry right now? And I ask that because as I look around the show, it seems like we're going in 8,000 different directions at once.
It's interesting that it's here at the show, but I see it in regular conversations with clients. In fact, I ran into somebody here who actually does one of the very large talk shows, and he was explaining to his problem that's the same we see everywhere, and that is there's this huge expectation in terms of the quality of the content we produce these days. Everybody's expected it to be top of the line, but I've got somebody who hasn't spent 20 years learning how to do that, who's tasked with providing this. Or I've got in an environment where I've got regular turnover in talent, and how do I adapt to that? Somehow we've got to make that equipment simpler, easier to use, easier to configure, and yet still deliver that kind of quality product that people are looking for. It's one of the things we're actually introducing here is a lot of automation that does simple things like, can I put a camera on you and have it frame automatically so that your head is positioned in the camera without having to have somebody manually adjust that. It's basic stuff like that, but it also expands to a much greater detail in terms of the overall workflow and how to make that simpler to use.
Are you seeing AI having a role in terms of what your products do?
Sure.
How so?
Even the things like I mentioned there earlier, that's AI saying, okay, where's a body, where's a face, and being able to put that into the frame correctly. There's that kind of level of tool that a lot of people can use. The issue comes a little bit later when you're saying, do I want to move more towards generative kinds of AI where it's taking over my production? There's still a lot of hesitancy. I don't know if we're ready to go into that, but making tools that are smarter to use absolutely makes it easier to produce. The other aspect of it that we have to be careful of is sometimes we talk about AI and what we really mean is connected to the cloud and being able to use that cloud processing and the tools that are there. Not everybody's ready to have whatever content they're producing connected in that way. We do at the very low end because we don't really care about security and we're willing to give away some of that. But for the most part, people are still wanting to keep control of that, and that makes it tough to put it into the cloud. So it's normally AI-enhanced tools, but that are available locally on-prem.
I've found that the word cloud and control are two words that rarely meet somehow.
Well, you can, but there's always that moment of delay. So,
as you look at the industry, and I think Panasonic has been affected by this more than any in the last decade or so, are you optimistic in terms of where it's going, or is it cause for concern?
Well, it's certainly a time of change, right? So that always leads to concern. People are wondering, well, how does that look next? Personally, I think we're in an exciting time, right?
How so?
Because we're getting to a point where some of these technologies that you've talked about actually make it easier to create the kind of thing that we're doing. We already know that the incoming talent pool is smaller than it used to be. It's a given, right? So how do you adapt to that? And that's where technology is actually helping us make better content.
Because there's fewer people coming into the industry.
Yeah, exactly. So I need an assist. Okay, let's have the technology help you do that. And to be able to produce that. And certainly on the other end, the appetite for what we create has not gone down at all. And I only see it going up. So when that demand is there, it creates an exciting time to create new tools to be able to fulfill that demand.
As you think about this show and think about the people that are watching, what one thought do you want them to keep in mind about Panasonic Connect?
I think it would be important for them to understand that what we're really trying to do is make things easier to use. And that's really a strong philosophy of what we're doing. Yeah, we introduce new products all the time, right? But always in the back of our mind these days is, how do I make this simpler? Because I recognize that that person has so many other demands on their time, other things that are expectations. Running the equipment shouldn't be the hard part. And so we're trying to make that easier for them to do across the board. Whether that's a switcher or camera, audio equipment, that's the philosophy that's underneath all of that.